Hello, welcome to everybody, and thank you for joining today's Quinyx webinar, How to Cut Labour Costs Without Cutting Staff. Just to quickly introduce your speakers for today, I'm Bally on the technical pre-sales side of the business. You're also joined by my colleague Matthias, who's in charge of the customer onboarding team, and we'll be taking you through today's presentation. Today's agenda looks something like this. I'll walk you through the first part of the presentation before handing you over to Matthias to give you his thoughts and experiences on how to cut labour costs without cutting staff. You can ask questions anytime during the presentation. Just use the Q&A functionality in your control panel and we'll address all questions towards the end of the presentation. But before we get started and going through the presentation here, let me ask you a question and ask yourself this. Why do you want to decrease your labour costs? What benefit and value is this going to bring to your business? It's just something to think about as we make our way through today's presentation. Failing to control labour costs effectively can quickly lead to businesses feeling the pinch and having to resort into drastic measures to combat these. Typically, this includes cutting staff, either cutting their hours or making them redundant, increasing the price of the product or service that you offer and passing this cost over to the consumer. This in turn makes the business more vulnerable to competitors, restricting the growth of your business. However, there is a way of reducing your cost while at the same time improving productivity, increasing revenue, engaging your employees, and delivering amazing customer experience. We believe that reducing your labour cost shouldn't be complicated. In fact, that's when you have the right data and a clear understanding of how your business works. It's easy, right? We believe when businesses embrace mobile technology in a workplace, cater for the millennials, and the power of big data to make key business decisions, they will not only reduce labour costs, but they will also be ahead of the competition. And this is why we exist. Our sole aim at Quinyx is to make a smiling workforce. Our goal as a SaaS-based, mobile-first workforce management provider is to be one piece of the puzzle. We do this by providing a flexible, user-friendly solution for scheduling and time and attendance. Key business drivers such as budget and forecast can be fed directly into Quinyx, helping you drive and build an optimal workforce. Communication is key, keeping your employees and managers in the know around scheduling, shifts, leave applications, for example. Task management can provide digital lists or tasks lists, allowing managers to distribute documents and tasks to employees. And at the heart of all this is Insights, Quinyx's data visualization tool, representing reports in dashboard format, providing you real-time access to data. This one piece of the puzzle provides you with a complete workforce management solution. So how are our customers using Quinyx today? And some research on our end has shown that over 300,000 active users, 3.2 million app logins per month, which has resulted into 100 man years being scheduled per day. So you can see how Quinyx is being utilized by our customers. Now, just as a quick reminder, if you do have any questions during the webinar, please use the quick Q&A functionality in your control panel. But I'm going to hand you over to Matthias, who's going to help you better understand how to cut labour costs.
Yes, thank you, Bally. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So what we're going to do, the main attraction is talk about how to cut labor costs without cutting staff. And I think just as Bally mentioned there is the easy way of cutting labor costs is to cut staff. So you might in the middle of the month panic over the results so far and the cut staff for the rest of the month, which could, in many cases, lead to unwanted results. So this is all around how to avoid these situations, basically. And what we have done is that we have gathered 6 rules to help you lower costs without cutting staff. So this will be all around better planning and better execution, really. So basically, these rules will be general, so it doesn't matter if you're within hospitality, retail, logistics, even healthcare. These principles are all the same. Obviously, you will have different KPIs, different information that you need to make better decisions, but the principles will be the same. So let's just dig right into this. The first rule, which is where it all starts. So you need to build your schedules around great forecasting. So this is where it all starts. You will not be able to build a smart schedule if you don't have a great forecast. This is the basics. So forecasting is obviously down to the plannings to avoid having to make quick or unwanted decisions during a month, for example. So with good forecasting, you could avoid the situations where you need to do adjustments on short notice. And with good forecasting and while doing forecasting, you will learn a lot from your business. You will learn about peak times. You will learn how to schedule according to peak times or times with lower sales, for example. So it's also a good learning lesson on learning about your business, really. So when doing a forecast, and forecasting can of course be tricky, and you need to know what to forecast on, but there are a few things to consider and a few things that you can measure and use as help when forecasting. So I think the most important piece of this is the first listed sentence there, which is learn from the past. So let's say we're a store, a retail company, and we want to forecast based on sales. So the best way of doing that is to learn from the past. So what was the sales, the actual sales last year for the same period? What are the current trend in our sales? So how are we trending? How much am I expected to raise or hopefully raise, but maybe even lower my sales during this period for different reasons? So using the historical data as a base, that will help you create a good forecast. It will also help you to maneuver through special days during the year, like bank holidays, Christmas, we have Easter coming up. So learning from past years' bank holidays, for example, will help you create a better forecast for this year. So that's the base, and that of course requires that you have your actual sales, for example, available, and so you can learn from it, and also you can use that to create the forecast moving forward. Other types of measurements to take with you on the journey to do a good forecast is have sales broken down per hour, per employee. So find a way to have your KPIs, for example, your sales broken down per hour. It's usually you have that data in your POS system or data warehouse or similar, so it's there. It's quite common that we see that we have customers and people we meet that measure these types of KPIs on a daily level. which is of course good that there's some type of measurement, but of course measuring sales daily will of course make it possible to have the day look okay, good forecast for the day, but in the end you might overstaff during the day and understaff during the evening, for example. So broken down per hour will make you be able to create a better forecast. Yeah, moving on, percent of salary cost comparing to sales. Of course, cost is important, including the next one as well is around payroll cost. So you need to keep track of your costs, and this whole webinar is around payroll cost and staff cost. So of course you need to keep track of that, and your when creating a forecast, your expected staff cost will of course need to be related to the expected revenue. You need to know that it will add up in the end, so your cost isn't higher than your revenue. So that of course is of course important measurements to have to measure based on this schedule, how much will it cost me. Absence is also a part of that, so any planned absence that might cost you either directly because it's a paid absence, but also indirectly of finding replacements and filling those shifts during absence is also time consuming perhaps, and also will affect the costs in the end. One thing that is kind of interesting when working a lot with forecasting is the last part as well, which is around full-time versus part-time staff. So if you do a really good and accurate forecast, you will also learn how you split between full and part-time staff needs to look like. It is, I would say, pretty common that we have situations where we find out that there are you're too heavy on the full-time staff part, so you are forced to add hours to the schedule that you don't actually need. So you might need to add too many 8-hour shifts during a day, but you might only need 6 or 4 hours, so on. So this is interesting, and of course a tricky area to navigate in between, because you obviously need staff, you need people working, but finding that mix of full versus part-time is very important. I would say almost all businesses, especially if you look at restaurants and retail, they have these pretty extreme peak hours, and it is hard when you have, so to say, too many full-time employees to fill those in a good way without having other hours during the day being overstaffed. So that's also something that you kind of learn as a result of good forecasting. Yeah, so moving on. The next rule. So in general, using an optimization tool to automate time and attendance, and also around scheduling, budgeting, forecasting, which we just covered. So basically, the whole kind of package of workforce management is, of course, a big and important area, which we're covering today. And of course, Excel spreadsheets are great. I like them myself, but of course, there's only so much you could do with pen and paper and Excel. And there's so many areas here where you need to be able to kind of maximize your work within the store or the restaurants. So having a complete tool which gathers everything within this area will of course help you be more efficient, but also more accurate in your work. And this is not only to save time for managers, it will also save time and make your staff more happy. But it also, excludes human errors that can be made to a bigger extent, at least. So it will help you with warnings, it will help you with overstaffing, it will give you warnings if you are about to schedule overtime, all of that kind of help that you need, which usually when you have a business, you're hopefully quite busy, you need to make quick decisions, and a system will help you make those decisions more effectively than a pen and paper will do. Pen and paper won't give you a warning. So this area is quite to kind of gather everything into one system. It's quite important. And yeah, as we mentioned, what it will give you obviously an overview of your business. Bally mentioned that you could have dashboards or a system that will give you a overview. Being mobile, of course, is important, something to focus on for all businesses, I think, and not having managers being stuck in the back office doing admin. To be able to make those quick decisions on their mobile phones or tablets is really a good way of increasing the customer facing time. Yeah, as I said, the ability to make good decisions quickly. Not only make decisions quickly, but make good decisions. I think the main part is communication with staff, of course. If you have a fast-moving workforce, which we have today with millennials, you need to be able to communicate with them quickly and in a simple way, and not you shouldn't be able, or you shouldn't have to pick up your phone. You should be able to simply communicate through other channels. Task management is a important part of any business. You have your operational checklists, you have opening, closing, or for restaurants, food safety is of course a big area, which is really important. So to have that integrated with your schedule, to give you warnings, to be able to in a app complete the tasks, it will of course make you more efficient. Simple things, schedule overview for staff, not a given for everyone. In some cases, the staff needs to go to a billboard and fetch a paper or copy a paper to get their schedule. Problem is that within a week or so, that schedule will be updated, and you need to make sure that the staff gets those updates. So having a accurate and up-to-date schedule available all the time is a important part. And of course, as we said, more control over the whole area: schedules, budget, forecasting, work time, and so on. Another thing that within this area, which is maybe something that's not super funny to talk about, but it is important, it is there, is time theft and what it costs companies in general. So of course, this isn't only employees stealing time, it's also registering time in the wrong ways, forgetting to punch out, doing things in the wrong order and things. And this is of course something that is a big area to be able to control, because you need to have control over this, and with a optimization tool you will be able to easily have an overview on time spent in a store or a restaurant. You will be able to follow up. Employees will be able to leave comments if they work overtime, for example, to the reason why, and so on. So it's much easier to control than maybe a pen and paper timesheet or just punching in and out without any other functionality. So this is also something to really consider, and it's also, if you turn this around, it's also around safety and for the employees, so they know that they will get the correct payment according to what they worked. They will be able to follow up in a app or in a web browser on how much have they worked, which times did they work, so they could spot errors and let their manager know. So it's also, of course, around paying correctly, and paying incorrectly will of course be more admin time. It will cost you when in your relationships to your employees, because they will get fed up with it, and so on. So it goes both ways, really. Yes, rule number 3 can feel really basic, but it is important, and it is important to have this top of mind all the time. Understand your business to optimize your results. If you are to optimize, if you're to create a optimal schedule and cut labor cost, you need to understand your business. So you can do this in different ways, obviously, but it really comes down to asking yourselves a couple of questions. So when will your customers show up? What are your busiest times? When are your customers are eager to buy? When do they need the most hands-on assistance? For a retail company, for example, there might be times of the day when you have a type of customer that usually comes in that needs more assistance, but during lunchtime, for example, you might have more stressed people that just need to buy a shirt, and they don't need that much assistance. So this is all around knowing your business, knowing kind of what's happening around you. This is done by obviously being on the floor, so to say, know your business, listen to the store or restaurant managers, and being there when it's needed. But it's also around looking at data, which we kind of covered earlier. So look at sales data, look at guest counts, or when people arrive in your stores, which time. So you have a lot of data there because you have systems in place. So kind of use them to see how your business is moving and what's happening in your business. And I think that the last sentence there, how is the business evolving, is probably the most important one. So you might have a situation today which you know about and you plan for, but in 1 year, 2 years, or 6 months, the business will have evolved in some way. You might have the competitors opening close by or closing. There might be other things in your surroundings that are happening, or customer flows tends to evolve during time for reasons unknown. So you might have a situation where your lunch guest in the restaurant, for example, they start arriving 15 minutes, 30 minutes later than they have earlier. And this will, if you don't catch this, then you will be overstaffed for 30 minutes during the day, and which you might spend on better things, or you might be able to change the times of the schedules you have to be more optimized. So catching this, and it's really easy to plan and schedule as you always have. So we've we always, 4 people starts at 11 before lunchtime, for example. But that might have been true in 3 years ago, but it might not be true now. So keep up with what's happening around you and what's happening with the business is really important, and don't get stuck in old tracks. Really important. Yeah, rule 4. Of course, you need to know what to measure in order to do good forecasting, do an optimized schedule, and everything. So this is really a key. So there are a lot of different things to measure, and there's no real right or wrong here. It depends on the business you have, what type of business, what vertical you're working with. These are the most common ones. So productivity, of course, so sales compared to number of planned or worked hours. So how is the productivity? Footfall is, of course, another good measurement. It could also be, of course, called guest count or similar. Sales, most common one for obviously reasons. In the end of the day, it's the money that counts. So sales revenue is absolutely a key. Customer flow, another one. So how is the customer flow within the store, for example? So this would be even more important if you have a big physical store. So how is the customer flow within that store? Could also, of course, be other types of business, but when during the day, and how is the customer flow within my store when they arrive? Is it different during lunchtime or dinner time, for example? So I mean, these four are the most common ones to measure, and these usually are pretty easy to pick up. Sales, you have that in your POS system. You measure sales, you have it available. Footfall, customer flow, there are guest counters usually in most places, especially in stores, and it's quite easy to measure how many people move in and out of your business. The last one is maybe a little bit trickier, but something that we really want to push as a really important KPI to measure. So customer satisfaction. It is tricky because it is trickier to, in a quantitative way, measure that. There are different ways of doing it, of course, but it's maybe nothing that you naturally have within your business. But being able to measure customer satisfaction will have a great impact on the business, because of course, as we all know, this is what it comes down to at the end of the day, is how satisfied is our customers, because if they're satisfied, they will come back. If they're not, they will not come back, and they will also tell 7 or 8 of their friends that they weren't happy. So this has a big impact on all businesses, and it, from my point of view, really starts to be needed to be measured more from businesses. One, I would say, very simple example of this would be if we would take a simple graph like this, for example. It shows a day with the different hours of the day, and what we are measuring here is productivity. So naturally, of course, we will have lower productivity in the morning. It will go up a little bit around lunch, but then we could see it's around dinner time, 5, 6, when it's more busy, most likely, because productivity is going up, and that looks great. Of course, we want high productivity. That's important, and because that will, in the end of the day, make us earn money. But if we add the dimension of customer satisfaction, you can see that the productivity was high, but it obviously had an effect on the customer satisfaction during these hours. So in a quick analysis of this would be that we were understaffed. So it took too long to serve the customers, to help them. So we probably had people leaving because they didn't want to wait. The ones that stayed waited too long for service and so on. So just measuring the kind of, so to say, hard facts around productivity or sales doesn't give the complete full picture, really. So adding in customer satisfaction really gives another dimension to this to compare. And there are technical solutions for this, where you can measure customer satisfaction in different ways. We see them popping up more and more and being more and more popular to use. Everything from the simple happy or angry choices, smileys, to perhaps to other more sophisticated solutions that you could use. But it's a really interesting area, and I think this is where we are going to see, you know, as a general, especially within hospitality, but I think this is also applicable for healthcare, for example. Private healthcare, of course, they also need happy customers because there are competitions where people could go. So this really goes for the whole spectrum. So really an important piece to if you haven't already, start looking into, because it's can get really interesting looking at this. Next rule. So have the right people in the right place at the right time. So this is really what it all comes down to. If you have the 4 first rules in place, the 5th one will more or less come naturally. But this is kind of what it all comes down to. And you know, a simple scenario is that you run a busy restaurant with a bar, and you have 3 staff opening this restaurant. That's every day. There's 3 people opening. You need to clean, you need to prep and everything. So 3 people. In the morning, that's not that many people to serve. We're waiting until lunch. The opening team of 3 people, they're done at around 10 in the morning. And the people, guests, don't start arriving until 12 for lunch. So you have around 2 hours of time. Obviously, you need to have it staffed because there will be the odd customer that pops in. But having 3 people will not be optimal in this case, because you will most likely have 1 or 2 that are basically doing nothing. And I think this is really really important, and it goes back to, you know, knowing your business and not doing the same thing that you've always done when it comes to scheduling. So it's having and finding these hours where you're not doing the optimal scheduling when you're overstaffed, and move that to a place where you need them more. So it might be enough with 2 people opening the restaurant. The 3rd one can start at 11, because that's when the customers start showing in, and right there you have 3 or 4 hours that you can place somewhere else during the day. Maybe dinner, they're understaffed, so you could raise your customer satisfaction by placing 4 or 3 hours during the dinner time instead. So it's all about kind of allocating your staff to when they're needed. And to be able to do that, of course, you need to follow the first 4 rules. You need to have good forecasting, so you have good planning, and you need to schedule according to your business needs. So it's really a key to have all of this in place. So doing this type of planning, doing the forecasting, will have you being more effective. And at the end of the day, you will probably cut labor costs in most cases, because you will find places during a day or a week where you can save time, and you don't need to have all the staffing hours that you have today. But in many cases, you won't save labor costs, but you will reallocate it to other times of the day, or even other times of the week. So you might be overstaffed on Mondays, but understaffed on Saturdays. So that's also a move that's possible without needing to raise the staff costs, which is an important part. So it's not always around cutting labor costs, it's also around allocating it to other parts of the day or the week or month, for that matter. So to be able to staff, have the people in the right time at the right place, there's a few questions you should ask yourself. So how are we performing against our targets? you did a great forecast, you did a great schedule, you're ready to go. Now during the month, during the weeks, you need to of course follow up and see how are we performing. Are the sales what we expected them to be? Are they higher? Maybe higher, and maybe you need to add people to the planning, to schedule. Are they lower? You might need to find ways of cutting in the schedule in some way. So it's of course important to follow up on performance. And also, if you have more than one unit, a chain of stores, chain of restaurants, how are they performing compared to each other? Usual thing is to group them together, because not all of them will be comparable. So you might have the smaller stores compared to each other, and the bigger stores compared to each other. But also look to and compare the different stores or restaurants or units, and see, you know, who's performing well, and then learn why are they performing well, and what could we learn from them, and maybe take to the other ones to improve their business as well. Really think about which factors contribute most to our staffing costs. So what's driving the cost? Is it overtime? You need to maybe look at the mix in within your staffing. You might need to add a few part-timers to be able to get rid of that. That's pretty expensive overtime. Or is it just a general high staffing cost? You need to look at what we just kind of discussing now is, you know, do you have the right people at the right time in your business? And the last one, which parameters affect our efficiency and profitability? So there's a million things you could measure probably in your business. It really kind of comes down to, you need to boil down and see what is the most important ones. Measuring, you can measure too much, and you can follow up on too many KPIs and parameters, which will probably just make you a little bit more confused. So you need to look at, okay, what's really driving our business? What's driving our staffing? Is it sales compared to customer satisfaction? Is it productivity? Is it guest count? So really nail that down and start with that. Then, of course, once you learn more, once you get that in the workflow, you can add other information, other parameters to work with. But if this is an area that's kind of new to you, I would say, you know, start off simple and work your way from there. Is the best tip, I would say. Yes, last one, rule number 6. Of course, don't forget employee engagement. So it's an old saying, but you need to keep your employees happy so they can make your customers happy, and this is absolutely true, and it kind of always will be. So there's a lot of studies and studies around this area. We can really see, and it's proven that you know, happy and satisfied employees will be more productive. They will make customers' satisfaction be higher, and it will really help drive your business. So this is nothing, you shouldn't forget about this. Of course, it's easy maybe to focus on the numbers and the KPIs and the forecasting, but of course you need to keep the employees happy as well, and they will go the extra mile. If they're happy, they will be more productive during the day, which will of course help you lower the staff costs in your business. Yeah, as we see, our estimates is that a happy workforce is 12% more productive, which is, of course, if you look at a whole business, that's a big impact on the business, and this really shows that keeping your employees engaged and included, usually, or it comes down to good communication, for employees being able to to have an impact on their schedule, to have visibility of their schedule, and being able to have that life workforce balance. That's important, and that will also help you drive your business. So, as a summary, these are the 6 rules we have talked about. Everything from forecasting down to keeping the employee engagement high. It is of course a big area. It is an area where you need support, you need help, you need especially system support. There will be more than one system involved, but it's they need to talk to each other. They need to help you show and display the information that will help you and your business make the right decisions. So yeah, thanks a lot for listening in. I think that was it's a very interesting area which we work a lot with in Quinyx with our customers, and I think there are many steps that many can take to improve as well. So I think it's time to move into the questions. And Bali, I think you need to help me here.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matthias. Some really good insight there. Just going to wait a couple of minutes for the guys to ask any questions, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah. Okay, so I could start, Bali, if that's okay. So we have a question. First question. We don't kind of know what KPIs to measure, what to measure. Where should we start? So of course, difficult to give a direct answer. It really depends on business and so on. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, is to really think about, from this perspective, what's driving our staffing. So what do I base the decisions on when it comes to staffing? How many people should I schedule during a day? And start with that. So it might be sales, it might be guest count or footfall, it might be other things. It might be within healthcare, how many minutes does it take to treat a person on average? Might be something completely different than sales, for example. But that kind of that 1 or 2 maybe KPIs that drives the staffing, and start there. And then I would also say again to start easy, to start with a few and be able to expand from there. If you kind of start from scratch and then start measuring 10 different KPIs, it will probably end up not being that much help, and there will not be 10 KPIs that drives the staffing. It will maybe be 2 or 3 of them. So start easy and then kind of move from there, I would say. Yeah, let's see. Another one, customer satisfaction. How can you actually measure that? And as I said, that's a little bit trickier area. There are no maybe natural ways of measuring that in a typical business. As I said, sales, guest counts, footfall, those can be measured because you have systems in place. You have a counter in the main entrance that counts people moving in and out. You have a POS system that measures sales. You can gather pretty easily. Customer satisfaction is trickier. There are of course systems. For everyone who has ever flown somewhere, you see these buttons you can press at the end of the security, happy or neutral or angry face. That's one thing that you can measure. and easily placing in the store or restaurant to measure customer satisfaction. There are, of course, other ways. You could also do NPS surveys. That's maybe not something that you do directly in the store, but it could be. I kind of work with that. So within a restaurant, disturb your customers for a few seconds just to answer a quick question on a tablet to get a NPS rating is a good way of doing it. So there are ways out there to do this. There are solutions that you can look at. We at Quinyx work with quite a few of them, and you can really see, as I said, that this is an area that's on the rise among our customers to start looking into. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Maybe we'll see if someone has another question to ask. Can wait a few seconds before, if there's someone who wants to take the opportunity. Otherwise, I think Bally, I think you could take the home stretch.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any more questions.
No? Good?
No.
Perfect.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Matthias, thank you very much for that. That was great insights into your experiences and thoughts around cutting labor costs without cutting staff. And for the guys still on the webinar, any questions that you have or queries about today, please feel free to contact either myself or Matthias, or if you're already in contact with someone at Quinyx, please reach out to them, and we're more than happy to guide you further into this. Thanks for joining.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.